Good afternoon, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. Today we're at property address 15880 Southwest Bob White Circle here in Beaverton. We're located on the back side of the house. I describe everything as if you are standing in the street facing the front of the home. So again, we're at the back of the home. Looks like we're just outside the formal dining room window. And that right there is the back right corner of the home as you face the house from Bob White Circle. So just a few feet in from that corner there, across the back. And it's tucked down into a little foundation vent well. 3-inch ABS clean out, water's running, we are zeroed out. Off we go here. So that kind of tan brownish stuff you see under the water, we'll get a little better view of that when the line's drained out. That is a layer of grease buildup in the line. And we'll see how that looks as we move through here. You know, once I get a continuous layer of grease buildup throughout the line, I generally recommend jetting. You know, so far this does not look like a nightmarish level of grease buildup. Not the kind that would just go causing blockages on its own. But it certainly can contribute to blockages, and especially blockages becoming stubborn, ones that can really hang in there, less likely to break loose on their own naturally. So the line itself here so far looks good. I'm probably going to recommend a jet. You know, and that would be generally a more meaningful thing for your larger households like mine. I've got, you know, little kids. I've got 4 of them. Kids like to ball up toilet paper. In fact, this is a nice example right here. No, actually just busted loose. What you end up with is a combination. There's a good bit of it right there. What you have right there is toilet paper that's been stuck to and impregnated into the grease. You can see it hasn't disintegrated, and that's part of the issue. Grease slows movement down. It causes debris that would otherwise make it from A to B to get hung up. You know, blockages, for instance, that form in it, they're made of toilet paper, like balled up toilet paper blockages. Once that toilet paper gets impregnated with grease, it doesn't disintegrate properly. And it becomes essentially waterproof. So there's a lot of different reasons why it's good to keep grease buildup, or keep your cooking oil out of the line to prevent it from building up on you. You know, for the average, you know, couple adults that know how to fold their toilet paper, you know, don't abuse the line with improper stuff, you know, not necessarily going to lead to just backups every day of the week or anything like that. Bigger deal with larger household. Still worthwhile to clean it. We're going to go locate the camera head really quick here. We are at the main, about 63 feet out. We may have some level of standing water towards the end of the line here, but even with water running, it's a pretty minor amount of standing water. So by the time we drain this thing out, if you have any amount left over, it's going to be a pretty rinky-dink little thing. Alrighty, located the camera head successfully. Line goes out to the side street, directly to the right of the home, which may very well be like Bob White Lane. Anyway, as you face the, if you're standing on Bob White Circle facing the front of this house, the line shoots out the back of the home, hangs a right-hand turn, and doesn't run dead straight out, but overall runs out to the street directly to the right of the house. And the main lateral is directly underneath the little island in the middle of that road where they have the little bushes and stuff planted. Actually, clever design there. That way you can, if you ever have to fix things, you can dig up that section of the street that is just dirt. There's no concrete there. Good design. That little, it looks like there's like a piece of tape or something they got down the line on the right side there. That is meaningless, nothing to worry about. It's kind of funny to see that. So yeah, you do have just the ever so slightest, I mean, I can only call this thing a belly from a hyper technical standpoint. Is extremely minor. Starts right around here at 52 feet. It's hard, it's so small, it's hard to even tell where it starts. And then it dissipates off somewhere around 54 feet. the thing is so small that when I move my camera through it, it wants to slosh the water out of it and push it forward. So that's right about here. About 52 feet is where that dissipates. Anyway, this thing's hardly worth talking about. It's so small. So I'm just going to say, you know, from around 48 feet to about 52 feet, you've got something like a 32nd of an inch to about a 16th of an inch of water, which has essentially zero bearing on functionality whatsoever. The only thing that what you will see consistently hanging up in a spot like that, you can see how the grease buildup was thicker there. Standing water, whether there's a 16th of an inch or 3 inches, will cause grease to concentrate in those locations because it rapidly cools down but also floats to the top of water and starts to collect on the sidewalls. So that's about the only thing you would ever see hanging up in that on a consistent basis. You know, not that you should be putting improper things down the line like paper towels, but if you were to flush a paper towel down the line, for instance, it would scoot through that area there with just as easily just about as anywhere else in the line. It has that little impact on flow. I think as my camera went through this thing, I think it busted quite a bit of grease loose. A lot of it was a combination of grease and toilet paper, which is actually ideal for cleaning. It breaks loose easier. There's a lot of that toilet paper kind of absorbs the grease, so it breaks loose in chunks. Whereas when it's pure grease, it likes to smear around and doesn't bust loose as easily. So as the line makes its way out, it doesn't just turn away from the house immediately. It jaunts into the backyard a little ways. In fact, I'll show it with the camera here a little bit. But by the time the line actually turns and shoots through the fence line, it's probably about 10 feet away from the back of the house. Does a little bit of a zig and a zag. Yeah, and most of your, well, you got a little bit of grease right here too. It's kind of at the start of the line and at the very end of the line. A lot of the sewer does not have very much. We're going to see what the interior looks like here real quick. But as for the line itself, minus the grease buildup, good looking sewer line. Has good flow. As it sits right now, the grease is not so horrific, but the line, I can't say it doesn't have good flow. At the level this is just, it puts it at a little bit higher likelihood of getting a blockage, mostly under kind of abusive situations, either improper items and or big balls of toilet paper. We're now going backwards into the home right now, the crawl space area. So pretty limited on grease going back in. It looks like the kitchen sink drain ties into the line right about here. So you don't have grease throughout the entire interior line. It's about the first 6-7 feet. Anyway, I'm going to recommend cleaning on this one. But it just understand, it's if you don't get this line cleaned, it is, again, it's not a level of grease buildup that is just going to cause problems left and right. It's not anywhere near that level right now. There's enough in there. I'd like to see it cleaned out. That would have more meaning, again, if you have a big house, mostly with little kids in it, that are flushing unknown sized objects down the line. And if you do end up getting the line cleaned out, I would recommend a rescope, you know, especially if it's something that happens through the transaction, the seller's covering that. Always recommend you get a rescope performed just to show that the line was indeed cleaned. And as for mitigating it, if you're newer to home ownership or really aren't familiar with grease buildup in general, the rule of thumb I tell most people to live by to mitigate the vast majority of grease, if you've got enough grease or oil on your pans when the pans are hot or warm in a liquid state, if you were to turn that pan sideways, there's enough on there that it runs off the pan or flows off the pan, it's at that point you want to do something about it. Pour it into a jar when it's still liquid, and or let the pan cool down, wipe it out with a paper towel or scrape it off into a garbage can after it's cooled down. That mitigates you. It's the real quantity stuff that gets you. There's no amount of hot water and soap that'll ever handle it. There's a lot of it that will remain in the line. If it's a little thin coating of PAM spray on your pans, that's no big deal. Hot water and soap, that combination works great. And one of the keys to making sure that it doesn't get hung up in the line if something gets down there, after your last dish is washed, let the hot water run for about a full 30 seconds to a minute. That helps to ensure that anything that did get down line remains melted and emulsified till it gets out to the main lateral. Even if you're running piping hot water and you shut that water off the second your last dish is done, that water might remain hot through the crawl space for a moment, but once it hits the exterior where the pipe's buried and cold all the time, it rapidly cools down. In fact, after 25,000 sewer scopes at this point, I can tell you exactly how people wash their dishes. If someone is a cold water dish person, all the grease buildup happens on the interior because it cools down immediately going into the sink and into the main line. If you're a hot water house, you have almost no grease buildup on the interior, and it will start hardening up the instant it hits the outside of the house. So that's why I say run that hot water for a little bit longer. It really helps to mitigate that stuff from building up, at least close into the home, if not getting it all the way out to the main. So there's my PSA for the day on grease buildup. We have a good flow all the way to the main lateral connection. Flow would certainly be improved if you clean the line out, more so helping to mitigate blockages from occurring under improper usage scenarios. All the pipe is in good condition, has good flow. Again, the belly out there from 48 to 52 feet, way too minor to need any kind of repair work. Sewer line is functioning properly at this time. It will function even nicer after cleaning.